So hello from Green-Mopeds in London. So today we are taking out the new MQiGT Model 30 standard range. So we're just waiting actually on this being put onto the registration system so that people can actually register the bikes. But it's sort of imminent. But we're riding this around on a tray plate right now to get an idea of how it works. The first thing to say is actually putting this into context amongst the other NIU bikes that are around. So for those of you that have been around for a little while, when we started in 2018, I think it was, with NIU, there was an M, which was a single-seater 1200 watt 28 mile an hour bike. There was something called an N1S, which was 1500 watts 28 mile an hour, a bit bigger, two-seater. And then added into that became the U, which was a sort of tiny little thing, still 28 mile an hour, but about 20 mile range. And then they added in the 125cc equivalent version of the NGT, which was based on the N series, but with a 3 kilowatt motor, more powerful batteries, 45 miles an hour. Okay. So in those last 3 years, the total amount of bikes, models, now set up for the European market from NIU is 22. We obviously don't get that many, or all of them. We get 13. And some might say even that's enough. But yeah, we get 13 out of 22. The reason we don't get 22 is that some of these bikes are not suitable for our market. So for example, some of them only do like 16, 17 miles an hour, because in Europe you can have bikes that fall into a certain category that you can sell in that mode. But even so, we have 13. And that's now including this one and the 45 mile an hour version that's coming, we think, next month. So after the U, M and N and NGT came out, it was fairly clear where they all sat. U smallest, M became the M plus Sport, so they got rid of the single seater. The U was a single seater, so that didn't really make any difference. They got rid of the M, changed it to an M plus, which was a two-seater version, and then you had the N1S and the NGT. Then what they decided to do was rename them. So the U became a UQi Pro, the M plus Sport became the MQi plus Sport, the N1S became the NQi Sport, and then the NGT, as it was called, became the NQi GTS Pro. And then they added in some additional models, so you got an NQi GTS Sport, which was the same as the Pro, other than with Eve batteries, so not Panasonic batteries. All their other bikes were Panasonic up to that point. Then they added something called a UQi GT Pro, which, although its sort of sibling was the smallest bike in the range, the UQi GT Pro had the highest seat height, and still does across their entire range. So meant for taller people. Anyway, then there were some cargo bikes brought in as well, and they all still exist. So that, again, is all fine. The reason I'm telling you this is that the MGT, while being called an M, is bigger than any other bike that NIU do, including the cargos and the GTSs. Okay, so it is 10 centimeters longer in the wheelbase. On the video, the promotional video, they say there's 30 centimeters more of seat. Only some of that is usable actually, because there's a rake on the seat. So it's about 10 centimeters longer in the seat, but that again makes it longer than any other seat that NIU do. It's about a couple of centimetres longer than something like a Super Socko CPX, for example. But still, biggest seat, longest, heaviest apart from the cargoes, so it's 113 kilos versus 115 of the cargoes, so it's heavier than an NQi GTS, either version. It's got a 3 kilowatt motor, so obviously much more powerful than the MQi Plus Sport, because that's only got a 1.2 kilowatt motor. It weighs 40 kilos more than an MQi Plus Sport. Okay, so I'm trying to paint a picture, I guess, of what this model's all about. You could say it's a bit of a, it could have been a new Model N, because it's sort of that sort of size, or in fact bigger, as I said. But for whatever reason, they've decided to call this an MQiGT. And then the 30 is obviously the 30 mile an hour version, and the standard range means EVE batteries. So what you're also going to see throughout 2021, allegedly, I mean we've seen the data or the information, but I haven't been told to rename them, I guess when the old models run out. All of the bikes are going to be renamed whatever standard range or extended range. So if you want EVE batteries, you go for standard range. If you want more range, Panasonic, you go for extended range. That's how you get to 22, in fact. So even the U's, the baby little U's, are going to come out in two versions. I don't suppose for a minute we will get them over here. But that is how you get to 22. You take every model and you basically double it up with either an EVE or a Panasonic battery. The basic difference between the two is range, because the Panasonic batteries are higher rated than the EVE ones. Okay, and as an example of that, you can look at the NQi GTS Sport and NQi GTS Pro. So the Sport version has a quoted range of about 60 to 70 miles, whereas the Pro version has a quoted range of about 70 to 80 miles. So for the extra, what turns out to be £500 between an NQi GTS Sport and Pro, you get basically 15 miles more, which could in itself be a reason to buy it or not. And they're doing the same with this one. So there is an MQiGT Model 30 standard range and an extended range. From what I can tell though, in the UK we're not getting the Model 30 extended range. What I can also tell at the moment is we're also not getting the MQiGT 45 standard range. So basically what the importer is doing is deciding how they differentiate the models. As an example of that, when the different NQi GTSs came out, you could get them in either wheel size. Some of them came in 12-inch wheels, some of them came in 14-inch wheels. But the importer decided that the NQIs will have 12-inch wheels and the NQi GTSs will have 14-inch wheels. But you could have had them in either. In fact, at the beginning you did, and then they dropped whichever version of the wheel size that didn't suit. Okay, so they're using things like that to differentiate. Again, that's their choice. So the net of that is there won't be an extended range version of the Model 30, as I can see, and there won't be a standard range Model 45, as far as I can see. The other thing is also colours. So again, on the new.com website, you'll see that this bike is available in 5 colours. But in the UK, it doesn't look like we're getting the blue or the red. So you're only getting this grey, which you probably can't see, but I can show you on a static review, a black and a white. Okay. For those of you that know new bikes, you will recognise that noise of the bing bong of the indicators. It is supposed to be self-cancelling, but I had to do it that time anyway. Okay, so as I said, there is a standard range and extended range. So what's the difference between the standard and extended range if they had both models? So on the standard range, you have EVE batteries. Okay, they are 31 amp hour batteries. I think you can probably hear my phone going off. Have 31 amp hour batteries. Okay, 48 volt, 31 amp hour. 2 of them under the seat. Okay, so that's obviously a departure from the other M, the MQi Plus Sport, because that had one 48 volt, 42 amp hour battery. Okay, Panasonic. Okay, so what that means is you would expect more range, but it doesn't turn out to be that great between an MQi Plus Sport and this bike, the standard range Model 30. So this has got a quoted range, according to the spec sheet, of 40, let's say 45 miles, it's 43 I think, and the MQi Plus Sport has got sort of high 30s to 40 mile range on one battery, the Panasonic 42 amp hour battery. So this is just proof, if it was needed, of what you get out of having higher amp hour batteries, higher rated batteries. So with one battery you've got about 6-7 miles less than with 2 when they're lower rated. Okay, so again, there are reasons to choose this bike, which we'll go into, such as size and all that sort of stuff, but from a range perspective you're not gaining that much for the £300 more that you're spending on the range front. You are getting twice the power, bigger bike all round, etc, etc, but from a range perspective you're not getting that much more. So on the extended range version, again if we had it, or on the Model 45 extended range, you get 2 of the battery that is currently in the MQi Plus Sport. Okay, so they're basically taking that battery, doubling it up, putting it into this bike, and charging you more money for £3,500 for it. And you're gaining probably about another 10 miles. It's not a huge difference. Okay, so as I said, this is really an example of what you're getting from different battery types. So we'll probably come back to that, but I'm just going to run this up our sort of favourite test hill, which is called Nightingale. So as I said, this is 113 kilos and 3 kilowatts, so that's 4 horsepower. And this is a 1 in 7 hill, and I'm in sport mode, which we'll talk about again in a minute. And as you can see, it's accelerating, albeit slowly, up the hill, so not a problem. So that is in sport mode. What I'm actually going to do, because I'm curious about this, is do the same thing in dynamic mode. And the reason I'm doing that is because on this bike, on bikes in general, when you have a mode 2 and mode 3, normally you get a different speed, but on this bike you don't. Both dynamic and sport mode give you 28-30 miles an hour. So I am curious as to what else you get by having this third mode. It might be that it's been added because this is the basis of the Model 45, and in the Model 45 you will have up to 45 miles an hour, and mode 3 will do that. But on this bike I'm curious as to whether it's superfluous or not. Okay, so we'll go around and do the same thing again. Okay, so as I said, on the extended range you're going to get Panasonic, and on the standard range you're going to get Eve. So this bike is 2,700, and the Model 45 extended range, which is to all intents and purposes the same bike, other than it's essentially de-restricted, and with those other batteries you're getting maybe 10 miles more. Okay, it does sort of confuse me a little bit, in as much as this bike is physically bigger than an NGTS. It does the same speed. It's about the same price, the extended range version. It's 3516 versus 3596. It sits, in price terms, an extended range would fit above the MQiGT Sport, the one with the 2 Eve batteries. So I'm telling you all this because people are already coming to us saying I'm a bit confused by how the range works, and in some respects I'm probably not helping, but if you look at it physically, it is bigger than them all. It's got the same controller as a GTS. It's got 14-inch wheels, same as the GTS. Okay, so in some respects it's what they did when they brought out the UQiGT Pro. They've sort of filled up a gap in the range, or they think they have, and this is what they filled it with. Right, so here I am going up the same hill but in dynamic mode, and I guess I now see the reason. Not convinced. Yeah, so going uphill then, the dynamic mode, I'll put it another way, going up the hill you would need sport mode to get this up the hill and still accelerate. But on flat and level ground, they're both sort of doing the same speed. Okay, so there you go. There's a view of Richmond. Okay, so yeah, 2 batteries under the seat. Interestingly, there is still a little bit of space under the seat for not the charger. We'll come on to that. You could get a disc lock, a pair of waterproof trousers in there, but not a lot more. Not a chain, I would have said. So you've gained a little bit of under seat storage, which of course you don't have on an N, for example. You have on the MQi Plus Sport a slot for the charger. This is a bit more usable shape, let's say, but still relatively small. Interestingly, under the seat you have obviously 2 cables to plug in the 2 batteries, and you also see another lead which is spare, and that is a new diagnostic cable that apparently they're standardising. It's an EU standard diagnostic box that you're going to be connecting up to it, which has got away from this, or might get away from the H1 kit that we used up until this time. Also under the seat, quite interestingly, is a fan. So I guess they've decided that these 2 batteries close together might have some heat that they put out. Can't feel it. So I'm not sure when it comes on, and obviously when it does come on it's probably detracting from the range a little bit. I haven't seen what determines when it comes on, but anyway, there is one, a small little fan underneath there. And as I said, the seat is, as comfy as any other NIU seat. This bike, I guess, if you wanted to put it in some sort of pigeonhole, you would say it's definitely made for 2 people. A bit like the Super Soccer CPX, definitely made for 2 people. Whether that fits the market, how many people come in and ask for a 2-seater is a different matter. Okay, so, but it is more comfortable. So I'm 6'1" or 1m81, and as you can see, I am clear of the handlebars, which some of the smaller bikes all round don't often give you. And obviously part of that clearance is because I'm on 14-inch wheels, unlike the UQi Pro or the MQi Plus Sport. As I said, they've borrowed the wheel setup from the GTS. Still ventilated discs, as you would expect. That's across the entire range, you have ventilated discs. But because you don't have a battery under the floor, that's why you are more comfortable in terms of clearing the handlebars. So for taller people, this could also be a reason to pick this bike over maybe an N, or certainly an N, because it's got 12-inch wheels. But there you go. So, well, we're stopped. As you can see from the dash, very clear, an integrated screen rather than a separate screen. You can see the two batteries, you can see the normal sort of NIU things, like it's cloud connected, it's got the app, etc, etc. Okay. What they've also done, which I'll show you when we stop next, is replaced the single ready button with two ready buttons, and I'm still trying to work out why. So you've got one button that disables the throttle, but now you have to have two buttons, else the throttle is disabled. Obviously doubled the safety, but I didn't really hear of many people who thought that the one wasn't adequate, if any. Okay, so yeah, they've doubled up on that, which is here on the right hand side. They've also moved around some of the other buttons. So the cruise control and the hazard lights are now above the indicators, and I've caught those, or especially that one, a couple of times when I've been turning to cancel the indicators. Okay, so before they were beneath and now they're above, and it does mean that you can catch them accidentally, but I have managed to do that. You'll also notice that there's no key, so it's keyless. In fact, the key doesn't work in there to turn on the bike. It's only for steering lock and the seat. So you can't use the key. Obviously you should take it with you, but you can't actually use it there. Normal stuff, bag hook, and then your sort of USB port for your phone. What they've also done is they've, as you can see here, built in the hole for a windscreen. So there is obviously a windscreen option on this bike. So you can't replace that because it's part of the screen itself, but you can get a windscreen. And what you can also get, interestingly, is a sort of bumper kit. So you might have seen these on some of the German bikes. It's basically almost like a roll cage. It goes around the edges, these sort of edges here, and it's a metal sort of tube, like a thin one, like some railing that basically goes around the bike. And obviously good protection if you ever fall off it, or good protection for the bike if you ever fall off it. And you can buy one for this bike and attach it. So the best use I know of that is for like CBT schools, because they're always saying, you know, oh, these students are always going to wreck this bike. Have you got any protection you can add to it? So that's a good feature there. So while we're sort of stationary, look, you can also see that because I'm 6'1" and my feet are flat on the floor. So if you go probably, you know, 4 or 5 inches shorter than that, you're going to be sort of tiptoe territory, which again might be a reason to either choose or not choose this bike. As I said, it is the second tallest in the range now, apart from the UQiGT Pro. Okay. The other thing that they've changed is with the footrests. So on all the bikes but the U's, they have a push-out or pop-out footrest. Okay, so you literally just push them out. On here, you might see it down there, we have got, it's actually integral to the body. Okay, so good and bad in that, I guess. If you happen to wreck one of the old foot pegs, you just replace the foot peg. If you wreck that, you curb it or you have an accident, I imagine you have to replace most of the bottom plastic up to the bit that goes up here. Okay, so obviously it's another indication that this is made for two. Okay, so here we are. We're on a 40 mile an hour road. We are cruising at its top speed, 30. If I knock this down to dynamic, you see I'm still going 30. So from that perspective, the dynamic mode is sort of superfluous, but as you saw, for hills, it does give you access to more power. Okay. In terms of the ride, it's all very comfortable. Not sure the wind deflector does anything, but they don't normally anyway, so that's that. There is cruise control, as I said, so I can now engage that, and you can see I've got a little cruise control icon on my dash. There's not many times you can get into a place where you can use cruise control, but obviously that works fine. And what I did notice is you can change modes and it will still stay on, which I think is a little bit strange. But especially if the first mode can go that speed. But apart from that, okay. So charging time is, as I was going to say. So charging time, what they have done is provide a 26 amp charger. So for those of you that know the NQi GTSs, that's over double. The NQi GTS Pro and Sport have a 12 amp charger. So it doesn't mean that they're using 26 amps to charge a battery. What actually happens is when you charge one battery, which you can do in sort of by plugging the lead through under the seat, or obviously taking the batteries out, it steps it down to 9 amps. Okay, and then if you're getting it to charge the second battery together, it steps it up to 11 amps. Okay, but the net is 4.5 hour charging time, so which is much better than the 5 amp charger you got with an MQi plus Sport. It's half the time basically of from flat, of an NQi Sport. So that's good. It's also they've beefed it up a bit, because it's got 26 amps running through it. They've also given it quite a chunky cable. It's now got these Chigori connectors on it, which you know are my favourite types of connectors. But it's still got the splitter box like the NQi GT, and the question is, could you use the 26 amp charger with the NQi GTSs? The splitter box, because the battery tops are different, is a no. Whether you can connect up the splitter box from an NQi GTS and use this charger on one of those bikes probably isn't liked from a warranty perspective, so you probably don't want to try that. Okay, but 4.5 hours, that's good. I mean, there aren't many bikes that we do that charge for less in less time. Super Soccer CPX is 3.5 hours, but that's 15 amps to the battery, so that would explain that one. So that's charging time. So it is on the grant, as with all NIU bikes. Its price, as I said, for this standard range Model 30 is 2,716. The price of the 45 mile an hour version, but also that happens to have Panasonic batteries, is £800 more. So it's slap bang in the same sort of price as an NQi GTS Pro. So your question is, why would you choose one over the other? Well, you would choose this one because they have got the same controller, remember. You would choose the GTS Pro if it's range you want, but almost certainly. Okay. If you happen to be a bit bigger and you want something that's a bit more of a comfy seat, then you might choose this one. If you have long legs, which would hit the handlebars of a GTS, again you would choose this one. And it is literally £80 difference, something like that. Okay, so it is an interesting model in their range. I will do a static review and we'll sort of highlight some of the other differences. It's 10 centimeters longer in the wheelbase and all this other stuff, and we'll put it alongside some of the other bikes in their range just to sort of show you how it does fit. But I think I've covered everything. So black, white, grey are the only colours that are coming. Available sometime this month for this version, sometime in June for the other version. Alright, so I hope you found that useful. Hopefully it hasn't been too confusing, and if you have any other questions, then please feel free to contact us at hello@green-mopeds.com. Please subscribe to our channel so that you can follow up on any other posts we do, and obviously you're welcome for a test ride. So thanks very much.